The Occasional Podcast, Part 2. I have a feeling that's how Oprah would probably intro it if she were here, but she's not. And we have CS coverage for you guys coming up in the next podcast. We just got back from the show, and it was pretty fun, pretty good. I know there was a lot of kind of negative vibes going into the show. Some of the press surrounding it, it's basically limited to 2 channel on one floor, the 29th floor of the Venetian in Las Vegas during CES. But headphones, of course, they spread out into the South Hall, the Las Vegas Convention Center. So the South Hall is packed, filled with people, and the lights went out. And it was dark. And, of course, the press had a field day with it, so everybody started posting really big, long. I mean, I saw like a write-up about how the lights went out for probably, 1,000 to 2,000 words. That is a dedicated individual. I mean, the lights went out, and that was the end of the story, really. But they went on to describe every little thing that happened as the lights were out. Security guards ushering people this way and that. It was a person doing a really thorough job about lights going out. The other thing that was like kind of weird was they had dancing stripper robots. I found that to be kind of a, thing. I didn't see them with my own eyes, unfortunately. I didn't have too much time to wander around picking up random items such as dancing stripper robots. But, I saw a couple of videos that were shot, and I wish I had gotten one because I think it's kind of hilarious, kind of a weird thing to do. I mean, can you imagine the amount of man hours it took to put together stripper robots? I mean, multiple people working on the project. Did the conversation go like this? Hey, Sam, do you think the tush should shake a little more from left to right? Does it feel natural to you? I mean, was it up to a committee vote how they did it? I don't really know, but in any case, those are the 2 non-audio highlights that I will debrief you on early. The episode will air next with all of our audio highlights. We got interviews, and there was a couple of fun little items that came out of it. So I think you guys will enjoy that quite a bit. The floor was good. I think that the vendors there felt pretty satisfied too for the most part. I mean, at every show, basically, there are people who are very happy and some that are very angry, and it just depends who you ask. At this one, there was a vibe of contentment, which I think was kind of what they were going for, even though a lot of the press was coming down pretty hard on be honest, it's pretty small for 2 channel. One floor is next to nothing compared to the other shows that have kind of peppered the countryside now in the U.S. If I were a manufacturer, I think there is still an international draw, and people did say that, like, well, people from abroad want to come down to the show so they can meet with distributors and retailers and show off their product to people who sell their product. But in terms of being, let's just say, a loudspeaker manufacturer, going there and showing your loudspeakers is, since consumers don't generally get in anyways, it diminishes that quite a bit, I think. I did not see Rick Rubin this year. Did not show up. Usually he's in the halls. No Kanye this year. So it was horribly vacant of any celebrity. I did see, however, Iggy Azalea. Not exactly the treat I was looking for in terms of celebrity status, but she was at the Monster booth. She came out, said, "I love Monster," took her big check and walked off. Actually, I'm just kidding. But she did really plug Monster hard. It was apparent that she was part of a sponsorship and was, paid to be there. She gave a little concert, 4 songs long. So, Iggy. That's what we got. So what we have right here is actually part 2 of our Sean Casey interview. He kind of went into his early years in the first episode, and where we pick up right here, he has just left his first real job at a motorcycle company and is literally starting his way into the big world of audio at Kimber Cable, which is another audio company located in Ogden, Utah, where he was living It was run by a gentleman by the name of Ray Kimber, who is still in the industry, and I actually ran into in the halls of at CES. So, let's roll it.
Yeah, so the day I was fired from ATK, and it's gone nowhere, but Harley Davidson decided not to fund ATK motorcycles. That was the reason I had jumped on. One, I wanted to work with some cool people in the motorcycle world, such as Ron Grivey. And Zach said, hey, Harley's looking at us. So I got to work with John Wyckoff because of that, which is another interesting guy, totally outside of audio. But his son, he did some cool stuff. John Wyckoff Jr. did some really cool stuff in the audio side of things. And wasn't really part of the Triode Mafia guys, but hung out in those loose circles, especially the Vegas side of the Triode Guild, if there was such a thing. So I get fired from ATK after Harley Davidson says, no, we don't want to do this. We're going to look at KTM. And KTM ended up saying, no, fuck you guys. We're not doing that either. The day that happened, I called Ray. Hey, Ray, we've known each other for a long time. Not really. I mean, he knew who I was. I knew who he was. So never worked together on any projects. I call him and say, hey, I'm available. I want to come work for you for 30 days. After 30 days, let's see how I might fit into your organization. And then that was it. I worked for Ray for 5 years and had a great time working within Ray and under the company he's created. Nate and Lonnie, who are still there, are fantastic. One of the best companies to work for, I think, I've ever seen. I mean, an amazing company, amazing man.
So was Zoo born right out of that experience?
No. So I was having a great time. Ray treated me really well. We got together on some projects, design, shaping the company. But he didn't have his thumb over me. He allowed me a lot of creative freedom, and Nate, Lonnie, and I made up a strong team, management and design, working within Ray's framework and also with Ray. Anytime we made design decisions, of course, Ray was involved. We did. It was all about Kimber and growing Kimber. I went into Kimber not having any professional experience with the cable business, but I had really good E&M, and I had played a lot with different wire, cable architecture, E&M performance when I was a lot younger, mainly because I was trying to make some Klipsch La Scalas and Klipsch horns sound good, trying to use time alignment techniques at line level, so different syncs and time delays with the old school capacitor inductors. Digital signal processing really wasn't accessible in the early 80s, late 70s. So I had a good working knowledge of cable and wire. The business side, growing his business and marketing, I had no experience there, but he had Nate and Lonnie and himself, which they do a fantastic job with that. So I learned a lot from the experience there, how to run a company, how to be connected with your employees, how to work an organization in ways that felt like a family, behaved like a business. And that was quite interesting to me. Typically, business that I observed acted like a business, and they really didn't feel like their employees were family. They felt like their employees were just assets for production or to hit sales targets. And with Ray, it was totally different. The reason it didn't really work out with Ray in the end, 1999. I got a visit from a guy, Mike Farnsworth and Terry Budge, and they wanted to offer me ownership in a new company that they were putting together. Terry Budge coming out of Wilson Audio, Mike Farnsworth being one of the kids of the Rhodes Bacon Served Bread success story. So they had funding and they had knowledge, and I liked both of these guys after talking with them for a few different times. And they wanted to, both they wanted to create something new. I get back into loudspeakers because they were all about loudspeakers. They didn't really want to do cable. And it was time for me to get back into loudspeakers. And with Kimber, it probably wasn't going to happen. And I approached Ray and said, hey, this is an offer I've gotten. I don't know if you're in a position to offer shares within your company. And, I think I'm going to take this opportunity, Ray. I've had a great time, but I want to do this. And he said, yeah, with his blessing. And so that got me back into loudspeakers, which I hadn't been into loudspeakers, professionally since really college. So that goes back 8 years absent of loudspeakers in a professional capacity anyway. Sure, there was always the stuff you were building, on the 2 or 3 hours a day when you weren't working, but having your hands in it day in, day out, I was missing that. So it went to Talon Audio. And at Talon Audio, I had a shitty house and I had a really fantastic garage. So there was always, I had a full wood shop, a nice electronics bench, soldering stations, and storage. I had a 2,000 square foot garage that my wife, Steffi, and I had purchased early on. Again, a dilapidated, rather crappy old Rambler, but again, the garage. And then we also had the motocross track in back behind the garage. So, it was the perfect place to live. And so we launched Talon Audio out of my garage. Sadly, Mike Farnsworth, I think, was set up. And so Talon Audio was, give him enough rope kind of expression. That didn't end up working out. So I left Talon Audio and then helped another guy from out of the Theta world, Scott Davenport, start another company called Wasatch Cable Works. And we launched that company also in my garage. We developed all the cable manufacturing equipment, and we developed the designs and spec'd all the wires out. And so we were doing that also with ownership, and I think maybe a little bit more promise. Scott was a fun guy to work with. I enjoyed him. He was into motorcycles as well, and had a really rich history in audio. After about a year of that, I realized that was also a dead end. At the same time, Charles from Western Electric calls me on the phone. Still remember this day vividly. He calls me up. Hey, Sean, we're thinking about getting the transcontinental cable machines going again. We're interested in it, and I think you could help us out. And I laughed my ass off. I said, Charlie, I really appreciate the offer, but this hi-fi stuff, you guys are insane. I'm out. So that day, we started Zoo Audio. Because it was time to do my own thing.
Okay, so when you started Zoo Audio, you were at the helm. Did you have other investors involved, or was this mostly just you?
So with Talon Audio, it was other investors. With Wasatch Cable Works, it was other investors. With Charlie at Western Electric, which never happened, it was about Western Electric. And at Kimber, it was working within what Ray had been developing and doing, and he had done a great job. I didn't want to do the same thing. I wanted to look at things from interesting points of view, new solutions, new problems to overcome. So, yeah, it was me driving the thing right from the beginning. In the beginning, there was 4 of us, all buddies from long ago, one of which I met at Kimber, Randy Sandman. And Randy, super talented guy. And then there was Adam DeCaria, another super talented guy. Also on the, more on the physics side, we bonded on the physics and not really on how to build a business. And Marty Peterson, there was 5 of us. Marty Peterson, grew up riding dirt bikes together. And then one other kid, Tyler Stoker, also grew up riding dirt bikes together. In fact, I was his mentor. I was the one that taught him how to run from cops when he was of age. So there was 5 of us.
It's like a rite of passage in Ogden.
Yeah, so at that time in the 70s and 80s, dude, that's what you did. You had a shitty dirt bike and you learned how to run from cops, and your life was awesome. But so Kyler, he decided he wanted to go on an LDS, a Mormon mission. So he split early on to go on a mission. The rest of us sold our dirt bikes, our climbing gear, second mortgages on our houses, and we didn't even ask no moms, no brothers, nobody for money. We were doing this on our own. We were going to be responsible to us only. And then, running your own business, these other guys had never done it. And it's a bitch. Running your own business is not fun most of the time. Sometimes it's super awesome. Most of the time it's drudgery because you're married, you're a slave.
The freedom doesn't come without a cost, that's for sure.
Right, totally. So if, I was in it because these are ideas and I was exploring my ideas and my will was being mostly inserted, dropped over the top of these other guys. And it worked out pretty well for most of us. But Marty, he decided that the motorcycle world was more his world. So he's been back in the motorcycle world since then. And kicking ass there, and so he's still a fast sucker. He doesn't race professionally, but he did. Let's see, Marty took a Utah State Championship in the 30+ pro class a couple years back, so he's still a fast mother. And then Adam went on. He was missing college, so he went back to the university, got a couple more degrees, and he's leading teams in more of the computer sciences. Kyler. He decided he wanted more of a military thing, and so he does military service, and then he's also a cop. And Adam,
do you run
Randy,
from him on your motorbike when you see him?
No, but when we ride, we definitely run from cops together. Still, it's just once you grow up with something as a kid, you always have that skill in your back pocket. So yeah, it's something that still happens all the time. So. Yeah, he only lives about 2 hours away, so we get together and ride quite a bit.
I always think about, I don't know why, but there is a scene in Terminator 2 where the kid runs on like a motorbike on the city streets of LA, I think it is, and I just think of like that, like a dirt bike with maybe it's got a headlight, but it's barely street legal, just ring, ring, ring all over the. Yeah.
Oh, we weren't. Yeah, these were motocross bikes. These were legal for nothing. So, and even our little pieces of shit when we were kids, all of us were passing down old race bikes. None of it. I mean, yeah, I had a couple shitty enduros. One of which did have a headlight. But man, if you were right in our neighborhood, if you had a headlight, he was like, dude, that's not hardcore. That's pussy. You got to get rid of that headlight.
So when you talk about your kind of vision for Zoo, do you have or adhere to a specific design philosophy?
What we have right now within our loudspeakers is a very repeatable, understood methodology. And what we are trying to do with the line is give people a degree of fidelity that I think is necessary. I don't look, there is no such thing as absolute sound. I think that's horseshit. But a way in which to experience playback that is communicative and immersive and enjoyable, fun. And the formula that we've struck upon, which is full range drivers in a high efficiency framework centered around the human voice, and not a girly human voice, but a rich man's voice, baritone or even bass voice, and then scaling up from there using a super tweeter to catch some of the harmonic structure that exists above 8K. This is traditional. So I grew up reading all these old guys. I mentioned Feynman. His book dropped in my lap when I was 13. His lectures, volume 2, actually, specifically lectures, volume 2 dropped in my lap. And other important books, as I was a kid, I would search these weird things out. And one of them was Harry Olson's book, Science and Music. And so which still is recognized as essentially the Bible for acoustics, for loudspeaker design anyway. So these are the books that I was using and referencing, and I was sympathetic to. And so when I was designing stuff, I was sympathetic to what Olson was doing when he was at RCA in the 30s. And so we pull a lot of inspiration from Olson. When people, I don't know, people are strange, right? It's a Doors song. But having a point of view does make engineering much easier. Having a design target makes engineering much easier. But to have an abstract target, which is, I want it to sound good, you might as well say, I want to be fast on the motocross track without ever having been on a motocross track. It's meaningless nonsense, at least within the framework of ideas that we have within with the loudspeakers that Zoo is building, we have efficiency as a high factor. Being able to put a loudspeaker in your living room and live with it is also a high point or a highly weighted data point. Direct radiators, I think, help in what our goals are within the efficiency and fitting it within a room. I love horns. Horns don't fit in living rooms. Now, if you do theatrical perfection, to use an old-timer term, yeah, horns all the way, 100% horns. But I'm talking about bass horns, mid-bass horns, mid-range horns, at least 3 decades of information. So I'm talking bass, mid-range, and treble, all expressed in time in big horns. That's theatrical perfection. And some would argue, well, it really needs to be 5-way horn system. I might agree with that. But you don't have a mid-range horn and a tweeter horn and then try to do a subwoofer with direct radiators because it fits in your living room and expect that to sound anywhere near holistic. Holistic is another point of weight that we place on our design. And to get holistic, high efficiency, boxes that'll fit in your living room sizes. Yeah, a lightweight paper cone with a big magnet designed to be a broad range, get to 8K or above, and then roll in the super tweeter. That formula works for us really quite well. I mean, you can see that expressed throughout the whole line.
Have you tried to kind of tinker with other materials aside from paper and the nano coats that you've worked with recently?
Well, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a material scientist, but there's a lot of fun stuff to work with. And when you do something passionate for so long, building loudspeakers and using drivers from Sayaz and ScanSpeak and Electro Voice, JBL, Eminence, Radian, Cabas. I really like some of the Cabas stuff in the 80s, especially their little bullet ring radiator tweeter. I thought that thing was amazing. But you get to experience a lot of different and hear how those things interact. And then when you're starting to build and cut stuff on your own and try different materials on your own, you realize there is a lot of trade-offs in the development of a product, and materials is a big component of that. But yeah, paper, look, if you look at strength to weight and fatigue properties, cellulose, natural fibers, they kick ass. There's nothing close.
It's definitely a popular choice. Right?
Well, for good reason. It's not because it's just it's not because it's easy. Yes, paper is fairly easy. But if you look at, seriously, like why is paper so much better than carbon fiber? Well, paper has built into its structure damping characteristics. And because you don't have perfect power transfer, the electrical energy that comes in that makes the cone move, only about 0.5 to 5% of that energy is radiated out in sound waves. And so you have a 95%, and I'm being fairly I'm being fairly complimentary to the power transfer of direct radiators, for example. 95% of that energy is realized as heat and as mechanical energy that is stored in the cone and reflected back into the loudspeaker enclosure. So what do you do with this 50 to 90% wasted energy? Well, with paper, a lot of that gets damped by its internal structure. Carbon fiber, the best carbon fiber anyway, has better strength, better weight, and it has a little bit better fatigue properties, how it performs over time, over the years. But carbon fiber, unless you're really good with coring materials and other materials that you match with it, it has zero damping near zero damping qualities. Paper is amazing. I mean, God said, "Oh, you guys are going to build loudspeakers? You should definitely use this stuff. Definitely pull this cellulose stuff that nature's created. You want to use that because it's perfect for cones. It's perfect, not quite perfect, but damn close."
Now, shifting gears just a little bit, is there some type of overarching inspiration for the way your loudspeakers look aesthetically? Because they are not exactly simple, but they definitely have a specific look to them that I think is a slight divergence from a lot of others. You guys do a lot of great work in terms of finish, and you offer that custom element. And I think this also goes back to your motorcycle stuff, because I've seen some beauties on there that you told me were done by motorcycle guys, just really intricate stuff. do you have some type of inspiration or just kind of, is there a look that you're going for in terms of the way they kind of sit in the living room?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to skin a cat. So since these loudspeakers are furnishings in a home, they should look good. They don't have to look expensive. They don't have to. How do I get what's a good look to me? Well, a good look is my interpretation of what looks handsome in a home. So I think there's a lot of ugly speakers. I think that our speakers look cool and they look good, and that does help separate us, I think, from a lot of people. They look simple, which I also think is a good thing. You know, I like Scandinavian designs in furnishings and in architecture. So I like how things look. So we have a design, and next is how to make that realized performance look good. So looks is secondary when we design. But we always have that in our head because we know it's going to be in someone's bedroom or living room or somewhere in their house. It's going to be in a home. Now, when I'm designing stuff for a discotheque or for a theater or for a live event, it has a whole different set of what is cool and what should look cool. And those are approached completely different. So depending on application and use, yeah, look is important.
Yeah, just as a small example, I've probably seen a few pairs of zoos over the years at the different audio shows where we kind of all show our wares off. But I'd like to point out, I don't know if I've ever seen a pair of zoos in piano gloss black. Have you made a pair?
Yeah,
do you offer
I mean that's
a pair?
Yeah, it's popular. Piano gloss black can look really cool, but it's so common that when we go to shows, we don't want to be common. We want to be the opposite of common. Give something interesting, something that somebody's never heard before, something they've never seen before. Present it in a way that is interesting and different, in an artistic kind of way. But yeah, so we show up with finishes that we think are cool, typically. Sometimes we show up with finishes that are near to hand and that are ready to go to a show, just because sometimes we suck at show planning, but other times we do good at it.
Was it Ruby Slipper Red a couple of LA shows ago? What was that one?
Yeah, that one is
Sparkles?
basically, yeah, so that's a PPG finish, but imagine somebody taking a bunch of beautiful rubies, crushing them up, dropping them into the clear coat, and the clear coat looks dead flat, mirror gloss, wet. Yeah, that's a Ruby Obsession, Ruby Slipper or Ruby Obsession, and that's something we offer. We do that, 3 or 4 times a year. Not a lot because that material is super expensive. And when I say super expensive, it's a quart of that material is like $2,000. Not that you use a whole quart on a pair of loudspeakers, but I mean material cost when it's $2,000. That's usually a pretty significant upcharge. So when you say, yeah, we can do that in the Ruby Slipper, the upcharge is $4,000 to go from wood to Ruby Obsession. A lot of customers decide that that's not quite what they had in mind price-wise.
Do you have a favorite finish or color that you just... is there a piece of art that you've created in terms of loudspeaker that you just thought was the pinnacle?
No, I think it changes day to day, and it's always... Yeah, as long as you put your heart into it and you thought about it and it does something, it's super cool. And so there's not a favorite. It's just... And sometimes, really cool things happen by accident. But no, I don't have a favorite.
Do you have a favorite amplifier that you like to pair with your loudspeakers? Okay, top 3, so no one gets their feelings hurt.
Well, I don't mind hurting feelings. It is relative to music and the experience you want to have within the music or noise that you're listening to. For orchestra and really big works, I've been really liking the PassLab solid state stuff. The XA 30.8 is one for big orchestra stuff, Mahler, Stravinsky. I like what it brings to the table on a pair of Druids with a pair of monster custom subs, taking care of everything from 40 hertz and below. For most kind of music, though, I really, really like triodes. Not all triodes, only very select triodes. Audion out of Britain, France. Their 300B integrated is fantastic. Their 845 that they do, I think, is awesome. And then everything associated pretty much with the old... it's really kind of a new guard of guys surrounding the Silbatone audio folks, sound practices, and those guys have built over the decades some amazing sounding tube gear that is typically only available in kit form. But there's a guy named Ganti over in the Bay Area that does a lot of stuff. It's not commercially available. Man, it sounds fantastic. A 56 tube. I like 46. I like 2A3s. I like 300Bs, 845s. But I also like some radio tubes. But again, almost everything is triode based. For some reason, if you get a triode right, it sounds to me more compelling than push-pull circuits of some similar execution. Not that there isn't some good push-pulls. So we're naming names. Tim Paravicini designed something for quad in the 60s called the Quad 2, little toasters. Man, these things, they use, it's a push-pull circuit with positive feedback using EL34s. You keep the new old stock Mullards in that thing, and those sound amazing with our speakers. At least from my point of view, they sound amazing. And then Eduardo from AudioPax, no longer with us on the planet, sadly, but Eduardo did something with a KT88 that I thought would never be realized. I hate the sound of KT88s, or I should say I hate the sound of the circuits and KT88 tubes. Push-pull tubes with push-pull circuits with KT88 tubes, for whatever reason, sound crunchy to me every single time. But he did an interesting circuit. It was basically a series KT88 single-ended topology, which doesn't sound that hard to do if you're a designer, but what he did with having some nonlinear feedback features and the ability to bias each individually allowed that thing to sound really special. And then depending on what preamp you're mating up with in front of it too, there's some other really cool stuff that has happened outside of I've been talking about tubes a lot, but there's some cool stuff that's happened in solid state. Lavardin out of France, realizing that the temperature made a really big impact and doing a lot of design work to try to target the temperature of chips. And I know the Pass Lab guys do the same kind of a thing. And now it's quite common to, have temperature targets. I mean, it's always been, transistors always have a temperature target, but still the extra level of care going into nowadays in the solid state domain where you're looking at how to get these things to behave in a very clean and transparent way is pretty fun. And there's a lot going on, I think, on both tubes and the solid state front that we should have some remarkable sound further than what we've been able to do. The 60s were a nice pinnacle mark. If you look at, the golden age of audio, for example, and there was some great recordings and great designs in the 60s, 70s as well, but then things got a little weird for me, I think, when I look back, 80s, 90s, thousands, not a lot of great stuff was built during that time.
Interesting. Yeah, so given the old school technologies that are usually kind of implemented with a lot of amps, do you think that the classic designs still ring true, or is the technology of audio amplification moving forward to a better spot? Is vintage still have its place, or are we moving beyond it?
Well, so vintage has... So all the smart guys of today that want to make money do not go into audio. They go into the computer sciences, information technology, material sciences. That's where the smart guys are going. So what you're left with is people like, sorry, Brian, but people like you and me who are dropouts or weren't successful with our first career choice or whatever. So you get interesting ideas in audio. There's no shortage of interesting ideas or companies, one-man bands, doing interesting stuff in audio today. But really great engineering happened in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, and then it started to transition. And we lost a lot, I think. So yeah, the old stuff still has a lot of relevance because from an engineering and build out perspective, and it's more than just the circuit and the choice of chips, but it was the whole package, how the thing was built, the selection of chips, or even the chips designed or the vacuum tubes designed specifically for that particular circuit. That kind of stuff doesn't happen outside of the really top shelf companies. Usually the pro audio guys, they're the ones that are pushing the envelope because their budgets are fatter, or it's companies that have learned how to make money that are able to push the envelope or attract new money. Devulet, for example, out of France, they've found a way to sell an idea and somebody's realizing their vision of new chipsets. So they're building their own chip. And I think that's the future if we really want to boil it down. The future is not in the past, but we definitely need a very good appreciation for what the audio arts did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s before we can really advance it further.
Can you see a Zoo audio amp?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be something that would interest you?
Yeah, but I like teams, and I don't want to be, even though I like to have a very strong control of the objective that we're doing, on an amp environment, I would be a contributor, I think. And there's enough interesting things happening in amps that would be something fun. Now, is that a good commercial move? Probably not. Should we do it? Probably not. But but still, I like to tinker. And when I get bored, it's fun to chase that rabbit around for a few days.
Are you
to
saying
see where
that
it goes.
Are you saying there's a prototype lying around somewhere that already has
There's
the logo attached
lots of
to it?
Sure, there have been those things that have had a Zoo logo. There's not many. Typically, those things don't get logoed; they get destroyed. And there's a lot of better people out there designing amplifiers than me. I mean, you've got like the Ganti I mentioned over in the Bay Area. He's way better at this than I am. And there's Nelson Pass. Forget it. I can't hang at Nelson's level. What I bring to the table, though, is I think what I bring to the table is unique ways of looking at problems with a very strong knowledge base with acoustics, especially the particle side of acoustics. Looking at loudspeakers not from a historical perspective where you look at it as an acoustics field, but where you're looking at it more from a particle level, and that is the same way that chip designers are looking at chips. I mean, they're using field theory to design chips much more than they're looking at just purely operational characteristics of a chip. And the same thing is happening for me in the loudspeakers. I think I contribute to loudspeakers in better ways, and so I'm going to stay in loudspeakers, man. Loudspeakers and cable. That's where I'm very at home, and that's where the company Zoo is best positioned. So yeah, we're not going to do an amp. No, we're not going to do an amp. But I play around with people who do amps, and that's fun.
Now, you've touched on this a little bit before, but your company, it's not the traditional audiophile company and I think that you would agree with that statement, yes?
What's traditional?
Well, let's just say the majority of loudspeaker companies that are out there. Would you say that exists today in the current state? Is your company more like them or more like something unique?
We're definitely not like them. It's not just me in my basement or in my shop making shit. That's bullshit. That's not a real company. You're a hobbyist trying to make your hobby your thing. I think, yeah, sure, that's how I started. But, I didn't quit my day job until we were able to do something truly fun and have a little bit of a budget to actually have, to spend $100,000 on a paint booth or a CNC machine or test and measures machines that are actually real and reliable, or develop your own, or build a planetary that can make the cable that is in your head. So no, 90% of the loudspeaker companies that are in hi-fi today are one or two guys in their garage or in their basement building shit. Cool. That's really cool, but we're definitely not that. And I don't want to be that. That is a backpack. And Zoo is already close enough to a backpack for me that I don't want to make it even more of a backpack, if you know what I mean.
So as Zoo, when you think about Zoo as a brand, are you attempting to make a statement in that atmosphere? Are you trying to make a difference somehow?
So Zoo is trying to make a difference and to carve out its own space within a very crowded field so that I can make stuff that I want to make. That's it. And I'm happy that there's a few sympathetic people out there that also think what I make is cool and that it sells. One day we'll figure out the sales and marketing. One day we'll figure out how to be cool without pissing people off. And one day we'll be able to make special, really special products that that only exist in the in the mind of people.
Do you have a story that you feel comfortable sharing in regards to the craziest thing an audiophile has ever said to you as they came into your room?
There's some stories there, crazy shit. Really, I think Garrett here at Zoo and I are doing a show. This is probably 2010, 11, somewhere in that neighborhood. He's got a first pressing of Voodoo Child that was his dad's, purchased off the rack. So his dad really into Hendrix, and his dad was in Japan at the time. So it's a Japanese first pressing of Hendrix Voodoo Child that's never been out of the family. It's a special recording. It's a special piece of plastic. It's a little bit warped, and I didn't bother straightening it, nor did Garrett. It's some of the charm of the thing is the sound that it has, and I didn't want to mess with it. I didn't want to put it in the oven between two plates of glass. So we have Voodoo Child playing, and probably I'm using maybe at this show it was playing through some Shindo gear, which is not the most exciting with our stuff, but it has a certain sound. And we had the Druids running. This is back with the Druid Mark IVs, and an industry guy that I respect and still respect came in. He's got huge hair, and I expected him. He's a product of the 70s, obviously. I thought, oh man, this is going to float this guy's boat. And he sits down, he's listening, and Garrett and I are just like, yeah, this is such great music, man. This is so awesome. And about, 3 stanzas through, we were interrupted. It's like a couple, there's only 4 of us in this hotel room doing this audio show. And he says, hey, do you have something else? Or no, says, he doesn't ask what, he says, what's the best recording you have? Something that'll really show off your speakers. Could you play that? And I said, dude, you're listening to it. And he said, oh man, I'm a product of the 70s. And he's dressed like he's a product of the 70s with the hair to match. And I just shook my head. Dude, there's nothing I can do to help you. You're welcome to bring some of your own music in and play what you like. But man, you're listening to our very best selection right now. And I thought that kind of blew my mind, actually. So we all want to hear what we want to hear.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I feel like that's kind of a common thread. Sean, if you guys don't know, usually plays some eccentric, interesting things that he likes to hear. But from what I can tell you, if someone has a request, you don't shut them down right off the bat, because that does happen at an audio show. They will shut you down, or I've even heard, I would play your CD, but it hasn't been de-staticked yet.
Yeah, things like that's all fucking nonsense, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of that at audio shows, but Sean's not that way. But at the same time, I've overheard people saying like, excuse me, sir, will you play something that has a real instrument in it? And the selection that was playing at the time had a string section playing. So I was just like, what is
a real instrument? Here's a conversation to have. So who was it? Was it Graham Nash? Or no, it was Dave. No, I can't remember. One of the great guys out of Crosby, Stills and Nash made a recent comment saying, I like music with real instruments. And I think it was an Apple commercial, maybe. I can't remember. But anyway, it's like, what is a real instrument? That's a machine. It's no different than your computer. It's no different than the only thing that look, even the human voice box is a machine. We play machines. And what we hear is not what is being played. The worst thing an audiophile can do is think that a musician is the reference for hearing things and to saying and the arbiter of truth in playback. A musician has no fucking clue what they're hearing at the playback because you know why? They're not the audience. They're the guy playing the guitar, and what they hear, as explained to me by a musician buddy, Dan Weldon, he says, I have no idea what the audience is hearing. One, our brains are all different. Our experiences are all different. Our hearing as a mechanical thing, physioacoustics, all those things are different. But when I play my guitar, again, speaking from Dan Weldon, quoting him on this, when I play my guitar, I feel my guitar. I feel how the neck feels. I feel the strings. I feel my voice. I hear my voice in my head. I feel the guitar resonance in my body, in my gut. I hear the amp I've selected. And what I hear is nothing like what you hear sitting right next to me in this room. And I 100% got it when he told me that. That a musician has no idea what his audience really is hearing, but they hope to connect on a mental level. Mm-hmm. And the road they're connecting on or the experience they're connecting on that they're sharing is the music, sounds, or noise, or the whole thing, the atmosphere, the whole thing. It's not some idea of the absolute sound. It's an emotional response.
I guess my response to the absolute sound idea has always kind of been a little bit weird because I feel like it takes an idea and places it within a specific genre. And that genre is either classical music or jazz or these type of unamplified instruments. If you're like a gentleman like myself who's raised on screaming guitars, the only true instrument that was ever in the mix is the vocals, right? I mean, unless you could consider the drums, but they're so loud you wouldn't even hear
a guy screaming into the mic or a girl singing sweetly into the mic is still processed information. And it's no more real than anything else. There's no real music. There's no real instruments. All there is, there's authentic.
Hold on just one sec, because I can add to this. At an audio show, they had an artist come in and sing with the track that was playing. So her voice through the studio or her voice right next to you. And the idea was that it was going to make the stereo sound so much like the real thing. But through the studio magic, her natural voice singing next to you sounded like garbage compared to what was coming out of the speaker. Because it was more than real life. It was more than what you can get from just here. There's processing and amplification of frequencies and all this stuff. And I was sitting there like, oh, this is a bad example because the stereo sounds so much better. Maybe that was the whole idea to begin with. But the poor artist was sitting there singing. And I was like, oh, this is... stop that. Let's listen to this huge amplified source.
I mean, you know a little bit about the post-production and what it means to go and record stuff. I mean, you're doing your own podcast and you're doing post-processing on this stuff. So you kind of you can work your way around Audition or Pro Tools or whatever. But forget all the computer-based stuff. Most vocalists have the mic they want. They have the mic preamp that they want. They have the vocal tools associated with that. Like there's a lot of like Dan, for example, he doesn't only, but on his riders, if he has to tour, he has a Manly Labs Vox box. And if he doesn't have a Vox box when he's doing singer-songwriter gigs at the gig he's doing, if again, they have to provide stuff for him and he's not traveling with his old gear, he knows he's not going to sound his best because he relies on these technologies to get the sound he wants. Now, if he's just singing himself and he's not using a mic, he sings in a different way. I mean, he's a consummate professional. He gigs all the time, he records all the time, he works with everybody. He's a real deal guy, and he knows all the processes in between, from the musician all the way to the consumption, and it's all relative. There is no absolutes in this art we call playback or hi-fi.
Well, I just wanted to also give you a chance to talk about what current projects do you have going on. I think, if you want to look at Sean's swath of offerings, I believe the website is www.zuaudio.com. So www.zuaudio.com. And more recently, we're kind of been talking about the Druid 6 Is that something? Anything else coming down the pipe, or the Druid 6 is kind of the flagship guy in the mid range? I think, right?
It's brand new, and right now it's actually I would say it's the flagship. It's better than it sounds better in 90% of the music than anything we make, including the Dominance. I just did a side-by-side comparison with that over in Delaware, over at a guy named Jerry's place. And sure, the Dominance does some stuff. That's our top crazy, array, looking more at how the wavefront develops on that guy than with the Druid. The Druid is point source. The Dominance is more of an array, a hybrid of line source and point source. But anyway, Druid 6 is super happy with it. It's the best product we've ever built. So now where are we at with Druid 6? We're building them slowly. Every time you come out with a new model, there's some growing pains and as far as the processes, and we don't like to release anything that isn't perfect. So, that we're building them quite slowly, but we will get faster. And yeah, if you're looking for a $10,000 pair of loudspeakers, people, put Zoo Druid on your list.
But, the Druid's not the only offering you guys have. A lot of folks, I think, actually know you from some of your entry-level stuff. They have the Zoo Omen, the Dirty Weekend. Every once in a while will pop up, and we're looking at, getting into hi-fi for like a couple of weekends worth of not going out. I think you guys, the regular Omen is maybe around 15, 16, I think, isn't it? But the Dirty Weekend will come down to an even grand.
$1,000, man. Yeah, $1,000. It's we think there's a lot of legs there, a lot of future there. Every kid with a job that has an apartment can find a way to get a pair of Druid or a pair of those Omen Dirty Weekends for $1,000. And it's look, there's going to be no shortage of music lovers in the future. The future of hi-fi, who knows what the future of hi-fi is as an industry, but it definitely is going to include people that innovate and can put real performance improvements in the hands of normal people. There's always going to be a future for those companies, and Zoo is trying to do that with the Omen Dirty Weekend.
Cool, man. Well, hey, Sean, thanks so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to kind of seeing you at the next show and see what you guys bring.
Thanks, man. Later.